Well, good day, everybody, wherever you are in this wonderful world of ours, in the US, in Australia, in New Zealand, wherever you are. I'm really excited to invite our guest today, and her name is Linda Thackray. And this podcast is all about taking charge of your health naturally. So, Linda is a leading expert in face reading and psychosomatic therapy. Now, I'd heard of psychosomatic therapy, but I had not heard of face reading. And I'm very lucky that earlier this week, Linda gifted me a beautiful face reading appointment. Now I understand what it is, and I was absolutely blown away. And I'm sure you are going to be too. So Linda is not only a registered teacher for the Psychosomatic Therapy College, but she brings with her a wealth of experience throughout her work. Her background is in telephone crisis counseling, so she comes from a very wide experience. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Linda, who's going to just maybe share her story. Welcome, Linda.
Margie, thank you. It's really nice to be on with you today, and certainly love the topic of, creating the health naturally, looking at the psychosomatic reference. And in particularly, I think people forget that the number one resource is actually their body. We get so used to being in a busy environment that we don't always come back to ourselves and using our frame of reference being, what is our sensations that are occurring in the body? What's my posture doing? What's my breathing doing? And creating an environment where literally just be present to whatever's showing up in your body. And that's really what I help people do, to recognize certain patterns that are showing up and to come back into balance.
So tell me, Linda, what took you into this very unique area of therapy?
Okay. I was actually in the corporate world, and the telephone counseling for me was a part-time, something I did for about 6 years part-time. But I never really felt like I was getting to core issues with people so that they weren't really feeling empowered by some of the calls. It was talking to them, but it wasn't really getting to core issues. And then I personally experienced a face reading. And with the face reading, what I found was someone who I had never met before was able to tell me things about my personality that I knew. I knew, but I didn't recognize that you could look at my face and see the things that they were saying. And part of that is, the difference between how the face actually develops between the right and the left-hand sides. So at the end of this reading, I signed up for the psychosomatic training, and literally in doing that training, I let go of some emotional baggage that I'd been carrying around for decades. And during that process, what I learned was my inner critic had been so strong that I wasn't really creating an environment of self-care, self-love with my thinking style. And as a result of that, it was affecting my entire life and all parts of my life. And in that process of completing the training, my inner judgment changed to a much more loving, caring, kind environment. And it just blew me away that my life could change so radically with this awareness. So I started to talk to people about psychosomatics. I started to promote it, and I was watching other people having these amazing transformations, even to the point that their faces looked quite different, like incredibly different. They were looking so much younger, so much happier, and with more vitality. So I did the next few levels of the psychosomatic training, and in 2012, I completed that full training to become a teacher. So I started with face reading before I taught the psychosomatic program, and explored also not only the traditional psychosomatic readings, but how do other people read from other parts of the world. And I soon became very aware that in certain parts of the world, face reading is very, very common. In some areas, they use it for facial diagnostics, and in others, they use it for, will I get on well with this person in business? Is this going to be a trusted partner? And we're probably, like in Australia, we're probably unaware of how much other cultures utilize this as an everyday type of tool. So it's still reasonably new in Australia.
Wow, that's fascinating. So, can I ask you the question, why is it so important for someone like me or someone out there to come to you for a psychosomatic or face reading appointment?
Thanks, Margie. It's a really great question. Sometimes we can only know what we're conditioned to know. And sometimes having a reframe, so a reframe can change the way that you relate to a part of yourself. And it also really gets to see how you've created your story, how you feel you need to be in order to fit into the world, and what's actually really happening behind the scenes. So we can read things like the imposter syndrome. We can read when there's a higher level of anxiety. And, sometimes that will actually come through as also pain in the body. When there's pain in the body, there's usually a mental and emotional state that's occurring. So as you start to work on the emotional field, that pain will change in the body. And quite often it can literally disappear. So I take a look at working with clients to empower them to make choices that they may not even recognize, like running the show.
So how can the way you help your customers, how can it improve their health? Is it just the fact that you point out that this is there, or do you give them guidelines to follow?
So it depends on the style of reading that they're coming for, or if they're actually coming for a training. The training themselves are aimed at the therapy side, and the individual sessions are more around creating awareness, highlighting specific things for the individual to make lasting changes. And that depends on what's out of balance for them. And the tools, some of the tools are, some of them are quite basic. It can be things like noticing whether the person is breathing properly, noticing how they're breathing. Are they breathing through their nose? Are they breathing through their mouth? What's their posture doing? Because we do these things unconsciously, and in that unconscious moment, it creates a pattern that affects the whole body. So learning how to regulate your nervous system, how to calm the nervous system, and really importantly, what creates activations, what creates triggers, because the triggers and activations provide a lot of information on the healing pathway.
So how does it work when you're doing a face reading for those triggers to come up? Do you see the triggers? Does the person feel the triggers?
So normally, if you can imagine, everyone's got different face shapes. The face shape is the blueprint of the personality. And then we take a look at how the face is fleshed out. So if you have an emotional experience of, let's just say, disapproval. If you're disapproving, you might have a particular feature. So if I said to a group of people, put on a disapproving face, there'll be certain features. Yes, the mouth was going to come in. There's going to be an attitude.
Yeah.
So unlike micro expressions, we're looking at habitual long-term expressions that start to change the form. And once you become aware of actually creating that and the tension around the area, but it's not only bringing awareness to it, but it's also bringing a softening to that area. So we start to notice how that would be if I was to do something different in that area. Emotions like anger, often dealing with people that have suppressed anger. And sometimes these people are the most gentle, kind, loving people you would like to meet. But underneath, I'm seeing a pattern of suppressed anger. And the reason it's suppressed is because it's an emotion that's not aligned to their values. So how does that show up in the body? It can show up as inflammation. It can show up as pain. And they need to have a safe outlet to understand why that has been suppressed.
So does it look like angry eyes? I mean, where do you see the anger in one's face? I mean, the question I wanted to ask you was, why do you call it psychosomatic face reading? Because, okay, so you've mentioned that anger. Where do you see the anger?
Okay, so the main areas that you start to look at anger and suppressed anger is in particularly the nose and the thinning of the nostrils and pulling up of the nostril. But you can see it in also other places, because anger can sometimes be unexpressed passion, containment. So when we start to take a look at anger's not a bad emotion. It's just that we're used to recognizing its out of balanced state. We really need to have a good, healthy relationship with anger. And, one of the questions I ask when I see the pattern of anger showing up in someone's face and it's been suppressed, I ask what their relationship is like with anger. And they usually ask me, what do I mean? But the reason I ask that question is often anger is not allowed to exist within the person's body. So they'll spend a lot of time, a lot of energy surrounding themselves with things that don't activate, that don't trigger. And if you're surrounded by just happy people that never press buttons, then you can actually lose that even connection with that you have an issue with anger.
So with that anger issue, is it better for the person who's got anger to shout and scream and be rude and carry on, and then it's gone? or is it better to suppress it and behave in an acceptable manner? That I find really unusual.
It is better to understand what has created the trigger and the activation to start with, what's actually really happening in that moment for the person. And quite often, if it's suppressed, then it hasn't been okay to express anger. So it usually goes back to childhood.
Right.
Yes. And
So when a client comes to you and they have this expression on their face or wherever it's sitting, how do you help them take charge of that?
We start to have a dialogue. And I guess that is one of the most important things about the psychosomatic face reading. It's not something that I do to a person. It's a conversation. It's really getting to root cause quickly, because your story is framed within your face, and the changes that are made also reflect how you're being internally to yourself. We can have, as humans, we can have some very harsh attitudes, and sometimes we're very unaware of the patterns.
And is it quite easy for a client of yours, when you see the anger and you express what you're seeing, is it easy for them to take it on and try and adjust it, or does it happen subconsciously?
I think some people are quite relieved that they're actually being seen. One of the most common things that I hear from people is, you know me better, like you've seen me better than some of my closest friends. And that can also be quite sad when you're working with someone that could be in this, late 60s, 70s, where they really feel that they've never able to fully express who that they are for fear of judgment. And of course, that kicks in other emotions. But the key to it is creating a safe environment to explore, and also to create the understanding or the education around how did that pattern originally serve well for that person at a particular point in time. Because at some point in time, it was a coping mechanism that worked. So by creating safety, it allows the exploration to take place. And it can only be done if the person feels no judgment at all as they communicate, and they're asked to explore, where they've gone within themselves. But the key really is, and I love the fact that you talk about healing naturally. You're looking at the environments that create a disturbance within the energetic field. And here, part of that is, what is my internal dialogue in supporting myself? And we get, generally as humans as well, sometimes consumed with what other people might be thinking. But ultimately, it comes back to that power of choice within an individual to create peace within their environment. And I want to reference like the male, the masculine, and the feminine energies that exist within each of us. So as we learn how to create peace within ourselves, we create conditions where the nervous system is happy, it's calm, it can be activated as required, but it knows how to deactivate. And that's often what we're not experiencing within our world today. We're experiencing people that still are living on guard, on alert, and their nervous system doesn't get the chance to fully relax. So if I can assist a person with learning how to self-regulate, which does require the somatic part of the psychosomatic. So it's not just the understanding, but it's okay, let's take a look at the sensory awareness in the body. Sometimes it will be directing that person to do some additional activities, whether it is yoga or Pilates or something that's going to open up the sensory awareness of what's happening in their body, creating more flexibility. So all of that's really important in the somatics.
That is such a huge subject. How would someone know that they really do need to have an appointment with you? I mean, where is the starting point with you and how does it progress?
It's interesting, Margie, that you'd ask that question. I find that a lot of people that come to me on a one-on-one basis, they're often referred by others who have had experiences with me. In the trainings, I get a large number of people that already have very strong professional fields, psychologists, physiotherapists, psychotherapists, and they've also experienced at some point either a face reading or they've heard about it and they just go, this is the missing link. And it is one of those modalities. In Australia, it was created by Herman Mueller. And it's not that he created the individual work, but he's blended it together as a therapy so that it touches on all aspects of the body-mind communication. And as that, it has its own therapy within actually learning the therapy. So you have to be practitioner, you have to be student. And it adds depth to the work that other people do. So if I saw something out of balance and I wasn't saying that I was a psychosomatic therapist, I would be able to direct my questions to you directly based on what I'm already seeing. So the style of reading that I work is to recognize a person's strengths, to understand what their challenges currently are, and to assist them to build a bridge between how they're currently operating and their capacity.
So the starting point is a face reading, is that correct?
For me, I start with a face reading. Yes, I do. I start with the face reading and a psychosomatic awareness.
And how long is that appointment normally?
It's an hour session.
An hour session. And then after that, they'll decide whether they want to go and do the training with you. Is that correct?
Training or further one-on-one sessions.
Oh, right. So if someone doesn't want to actually do the training, is that as the 6-hour training?
No, that's normally well, I've got several trainings. I've got a 6-hour introductory training. I've got face reading, which the face reading one is a gentle introduction to psychosomatics. As you learn how to read other people's faces, you get an understanding of how they perceive their world differently to yours. So that is probably the most common course that people jump into. And then the full psychosomatic therapy training, which is 12 days face-to-face, and it takes about a year to complete.
Oh, right, right. Well, that's so much information. Now, what tips have you got for our listeners if they're considering it, or whether they should or shouldn't, or how? What tips have you got?
Well, the number one thing is just to check in with your body, to notice your internal dialogue, and to notice how kind your internal dialogue is. And if you find that you're lacking confidence, you're feeling like you have to put on a mask, that you're not truly happy in your own skin, then psychosomatics would definitely be a benefit for you. And also maybe, get a friend to take a photo of your posture. It's always a good one. People are sometimes very unaware of how they're currently standing. And particularly these days, the forward head syndrome. So the forward head syndrome, we see it when we're walking down the street. Like, lots of people are so far forward of themselves, they're literally ahead of their body. And within that, their head is not supporting their body. They're not feeling supported. So even just like corrections with how your head is positioned, how your feet are standing. The feet ideally should be hip, knee, ankle. And if you're taking up less space, then you're not taking up your rightful space. If you're taking up more space, then there's a reason why you feel like you need to take up more. So even if it's just to explore and have fun, if you want to just know your gifts, that can also be quite exciting, just to see how your gifts present on your face.
That is fascinating, Linda. I mean, I've only just had the face reading. I think I'm going to have to explore more. So you did say that you have a few little treats for our listeners. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, there are a few little freebies that they may partake of.
Yes. So monthly we do a psychosomatic conversations, and the psychosomatic conversations are all things relating to mind, body, health and wellness, relationships. We do a lot of Q&A within that. So as a listener, if you've got something happening that you'd like some insight in, you can send those in as questions and we'll include them in the webinars or the monthly sessions. So you can jump on my website, that is thefaceandbodyinterpreter.com, and you'll be able to join under the wellness library. You'll see how to join those monthly classes. If anyone does decide to join also the face reading class, which is it's basically 16 hours of training, you will receive a free face reading book. But please mention Margie's name and I will send you that book along with some additional resources that you'll have.
That sounds absolutely marvelous. I must say that I have never interviewed anybody coming from this walk of life, which is a very unique area. And you certainly are a specialist in your field. In parting, if there's a closing word for our listeners, I want to say thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Margie, thank you so much. And parting word, enjoy you. Enjoy you.
I like that.